sexy people. It is Dave, it is Duncan, back from Epidemic for another album review. And for this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from French Post-Prog band HamaSaari. The band's new album, Ineffable, was released on March 3rd via Klonosphere and Season of Mist. So, what do we know? This is a debut album from HamaSaari, who were born from the ashes of another band called Shuffle. And after a meticulous writing and arrangement process, the band opted for organic and forthright production. The talented Guillaume Bernard, who is the Klone guitarist, accompanies... he accompanies them in the arrangements, guiding the band to refine the structures and the melodies.
This is stealing things from my review.
The album was recorded live at LaGrange Studio by Paul Peterson and HamaSaari guitarist vocalist Jordan. The band then chose Forrester Savell, who has worked with Animals as Leaders and Karnivool, to mix and master the album. So, Duncan, it feels like a lot of prog is happening this year so far. I don't know why, but
it's not the year of prog. Let's it's a blip.
We've done Klone, we've done Hypnose, the Enigma Division. Yeah. We've got another wee prog album that's on the horizon as well. Haken. So it feels like the first couple of months there's been a few prog albums coming in.
I'm just going to say, about this time last year, you called it as a year of hardcore, and it wasn't. So
I'm not saying it this year.
You need to hold back on your predictions.
I'm not saying it, not at all. It comes at an interesting time because it's a debut album.
Have just released an album,
yes. It's a debut, but they're also releasing at a time where there's all these other bands releasing prog albums. There's still quite a lot to come this year as well. So I'll let you take the floor. What did you make of this? Well, this is a brand new band for both of us, I think. I don't think any of us had heard of this band. So what did you make of this?
I really liked this. I think you've kind of ticked off a few of the things I was going to talk about that I thought were revelations, which turns out were in the press statement. If I just read the press statement, it wouldn't have been. One of the big things for me was how live this feels.
Yeah.
I kind of loved the production on this. Genuinely felt like this had a really kind of earthy, organic, in a room together, almost kind of like BBC radio sessions sort of vibe, if you know what I mean. It felt, I could feel the guys in the room together. It was, it has that aura about it. The second thing was comparisons to Klone. And that I felt like arrangement-wise, specifically in the arrangement, and this is now redundant because of what you've just said, having just listened to that Klone album on repeat for the best part of a week, there's a lot of similarities in the way the songs are structured here and the elements, and also the overall flow of the album. This is an album that starts off at a decent pace, builds up. The heaviest parts are in the middle, and then it nicely kind of sachets out towards the end. You get a really good introduction through Different Time, which is opening track. Also, we're saying all the tracks here close to 6 minutes, right? So get ready. But it kind of builds up with a guitar kind of tone that almost reminded me a little bit of Boy Hits Car.
You stole it, man. I was going to drop that.
Cool.
I was going to drop that in.
One mind. We spent too much time together listening to the same albums. There was a kind of Boy Hits Car thing coming through on the guitar work, which I really enjoyed. They're a band that even from their era, I don't think anyone has sounded really like at all. You play any of their songs and you would know who they were. And guitar-wise, it definitely had that feel, although once again, a kind of more live sound sort of styling. It's not as energetic as that, and nor does the album ever really get as energetic as that. Yeah. But it was really cool to allow that as elements and layers that come in. Then you get the vocals, and the vocals are, I really like this guy's tone. It's higher in the register, but it's not nauseatingly high. It kind of reminded me, and you mentioned the band already, but in a kind of more to the side sort of thing, with the mixing and mastering. There's a little bit of Karnivool in there, which I really liked, and his melodies are on fucking point. This guy can sing, like genuinely, just really, really interesting to listen to. Even when they move into the heavier elements of like a Bleak or White Pinnacles, like his tone, even when it starts to get a bit more aggro, still is pitch perfect and nice and clear. A good resonance about it. It really works. The album itself, like I said before, kind of opens with this kind of building up track of Different Time, which really kind of does set the stage. It then kind of carries that energy through into Crumbs, which is slightly longer, bit proggier. Some interesting like drum work on it. The musicianship in general is just great across the board. But I really liked once again the vocals and the production on it. It just felt roomy. I keep saying roomy, but that's what I felt. Lords like essentially continues the interest through, but it builds into the very well named Bleak, where things start to take a darker turn. Things get a little bit heavier. There's a bit more distortion, a bit more discordant stuff going on there, but not unpleasant to the ear. They always, even when they go a bit darker, manage to do something that's surprisingly nice to listen to. Bleak sees the band really lean more into the work on the keys, which we're going to get to at the end because the keyboard player is really good. A bit more into that, more soundscapes. White Pinnacles, once again, is kind of keeping the intensity there. And then you get hit with a kind of 1-2 punch on the way out of tracks that really bring you down through Old Memories and Prognosis, which are tracks deliberately designed in a way to, as if this is the level you're at, the next one goes to there, and then you go to there. So it's not like a drop, right, this is the last track. You're eased into it, like easing yourself into a warm bath. It's not straight away. I quite like that. I think there's a tendency nowadays for bands to go hell for leather up until the last song, and then the last song is like almost like Whiplash, where it is like not, you're surprised by how not aggressive it is compared to everything that's come before. And then there's the other technique that bands do where that'll go heavy, and then there's one track that isn't, it's heavy, and then there's one track that isn't. What they've done is they've said 7 tracks, let's just put those 2 at the end. And I'm kind of cool with that because the middle 2 tracks are different enough. We've talked about the vocals. Guitar playing's great. I really love the guitar tone on this. I think it really kind of captured that live room sound without it sounding kind of muddled or anything. It's nice and clear. Bass is well recorded as well. Drummer's really good, not exceptional in any way, shape or form, but I loved some of the fills he did and some of his choices in kind of the structure of what he's playing. Keys are great, not overused here, but really well used. They're purely used to lift or lower, and I like that. It's about textures. And they're very, very, very good at that as well. It doesn't run hellishly long, but for a 7-track album, it is still 40 minutes. So be mindful of that. But I found myself on like the 3rd listen and moving it to the 4th listen, actually really kind of enjoying the length. And I think that comes down to what we mentioned before, to do with the composition. The Klone album has some hefty length tracks, but one thing you could never say about it at any time was it got boring. And I think the reason that worked so well is mostly the composition stylings of it. There's enough going on that even if they revisit things, you never feel like you're coming back to the same point too much. And I think HamaSaari have got that really well done. And I think if they weren't sure about how to do arrangements, or they weren't comfortable with their arrangements, they picked a fucking like an MVP to come in and do that for them. You know, if you're gonna work with someone who's not a producer to help you structure your songs, then you could do far worse than the Klone guitarist, who's made like those last 3 Klone albums are fucking huge. And it's weird as well because you mentioned Klone, and I hear their production, which is fucking huge sounding, like it's arena sounding huge. And then I hear this, and this isn't arena sounding huge, but I could totally see HamaSaari opening for Klone. I think that'd be really, really cool. Once again, I don't think this is, I'm maybe saying this a few times tonight, I don't think this is reinventing the wheel or necessarily even doing anything I haven't heard before, but it's clear that HamaSaari on their debut have a good grounding of what their sound is, and they're all accomplished enough to deliver it. I think the songs are confidently written, and they really shine through. So it's one of those ones where there was nothing at the end where I was like, but at the same time, I was acutely aware of all the elements that made it kind of special to listen to, right from the production through the vocals, the key work, and then just the really good songwriting and structure that's here. They're a very, very, very interesting band, and I don't use that word interesting in the way that a lot of people use it, where they don't have another word to replace it with. I think they are. I think they can do a bit heavier as well because they do it in the album. Kind of like Klone, where you kind of like, and actually not like Klone, because with Klone I kind of like, just give me one song, just give me one song. In the case of these guys, because I don't have that in the background, when it fits in here and where they've placed it, it actually really works on the album. It doesn't stand out too much against everything else. So yeah, it's like Ineffable is a really good album.
Interesting. Okay.
Are we going to swap places here?
My first listen to this, I wasn't really sure about it at all. The first listen, just didn't leave me with much kind of impact. Afterwards, I was a bit like, I don't really know what to think about that album. But I'm a consummate professional, Duncan. You know what I mean?
Dave's a trier, ladies.
I take this job very seriously, so
very, very seriously.
I took a little break from it, went back to it. What I found was this album is more of a grower.
Oh, not a shower.
Not a shower. Don't get me wrong.
I know what you're saying.
And I'm kind of with you in that I still wouldn't say this album like blew my mind in any kind of way, but you know, it doesn't feel like it's loaded with huge moments. But there is something interesting about it as well.
A quality, would you say?
A what?
It's got a quality about it.
It does have a quality. Yes, it does. I was same as you. Like right off the bat, I was hearing like Klone. I could hear like Karnivool. You know, for that the more kind of modern kind of prog bands. But there was also there was something kind of old school about it as well. There was like a more like almost like a Pink Floyd in there, or like even like Porcupine Tree as well at times.
Porcupine Tree is a good shout.
Yeah. And that's I think it's that mix that kind of made it quite interesting, you know, to kind of get my head around. The first time I was like, I really don't know what's going on here. It's not an overly heavy album, like you say, even though it does have like heavy moments in it. And, you know, the opening track, Different Time, it has that kind of almost like Klone meets like a Karnivool type riff. And the vocalist as well, he does have a kind of Ian Kenny from Karnivool type vibe.
There's just an inflection there.
Yeah, and I thought as an opener, it was actually pretty good. It's a good kind of momentum builder to the album. Starts soft and tranquil, then it builds into itself with lots of kind of proggy rhythms and a bigger chorus. The track flows really well thematically, and although it has similarities to like other bands that we mentioned, there was something kind of like that kind of like late 90s, early 2000s, that kind of alternative side that you were talking about, which I really like that because I wasn't really expecting it. There's also some nice synths that kind of elevate the chorus as well, and the kind of climax of the track. That alternative kind of vibe, it never really goes away. I could hear it. You can hear it coming through on Crumbs as well, track 2, and that's where I was picking up that like Boy Hits Car and a bit of kind of Incubus in there as well. But there was a little kind of like streak of Tool or something in there as well, like especially in the bass. The bass tone, it reminded me a little bit of Enema a wee bit in the production. I loved where they had it sitting in the mix. You know, it's nice and prominent, letting those kind of more like kind of freestyle moments, they were really kind of shining through. And again, they've got the synths in there as well. The synths were a little bit more kind of almost symphonic or orchestral or something like that. They kind of lifted the track to a peak. And as the first two tracks go, I think I really came round to them more and more after I heard them. After initially not really being sure. The two tracks that follow, a little bit more restrained. You've got a little bit more kind of airy and kind of calm. You know, they start to use a little more kind of like vintage, almost like folky instrumentation. You know, you got the acoustic guitars and the Lords, and then Bleak is a bit of a slow burner. Taking you on a bit of a kind of journey before giving you something kind of more substantial and kind of weighty. Again, quite heavy on the keys, but I think they kind of add quite a nice contrast to the track, giving it more atmosphere and more room. Possibly not the most memorable tracks on the album, but a different side to the band as well. White Pinnacles, I think, probably comes in at the best possible moment, coming off a slightly lighter tracks. It's a bit more contorted in the riffs and rhythms. It's a bit darker in the synth work. And it hears the vocalist, Jordan, kind of push into a kind of higher register as well. A bit more grit behind his voice. It's probably the heaviest track on the album, but still a decent chorus and a kind of strong ending. Old Memories, I actually really enjoyed. I thought the acoustic guitar as a kind of driving force actually worked really well on the track. It's got almost like a kind of alt rock kind of feel to it, but they bulk it up with kind of heavy bass, some nice kind of tasteful synths as well. So it was a track that feels probably one of the more conventional tracks on the album. I actually thought it was one of the standouts. I really enjoyed that. The last track, Prognosis, you know what I'm going to say here.
Yep.
It was okay. It was kind of, spacey, atmospheric. It almost felt like partly like an outro rather than an actual song. It didn't really blow me away, but I can see what they were going for as a closer. I can see why they put it in there. I really like the flow of the album in general. I think the tracks, and kind of like Klone, like you've said, the tracks transition really well into one another.
Each other,
it's a little bit similar in tempo throughout. But that could be said for the latest Klone album as well.
Yeah.
Although Klone are different level, but it does, and it feels there's times where I felt it was a little bit repetitive. And there's a few tracks that sit within the same similar tone and similar rhythm, and it's not quite got that level of uniqueness down that some other the other bands that they're influenced by have. The difference being, though, this is a debut album. And those other bands, that we've mentioned have been on the go for way longer.
Oh god, yeah.
That being said, I think there is a lot that they've done right here. There are tracks that the more you listen to, the more they do kind of get stuck in your head, whether that be a catchy chorus or a proggy kind of groove. As you said, musicianship's of a high standard. The arrangements have got plenty of layers to them. My only thing is, I don't think it's quite got the consistency right across the album. I do really like that kind of alternative slant that they've added in. Whether they've done that, consciously or subconsciously, I don't know, but I think that kind of separates them a little bit more from the pack, which I quite liked. The production, I think, was good. I like the fact that it was recorded live. I think that benefited a lot of the tracks. Like Old Memories, for example, sound really like vibrant because it was done live. I felt like sometimes some of the tracks maybe lacked a little bit of punch. Like when they do move into that kind of heavier territory, I felt like the production didn't really elevate it like it should have. However, as a band, you can hear that they are clearly locked in musically. For a debut album, they sound really tight. And I really enjoyed the inclusion of like acoustic guitars and a more kind of like almost vintage keys and the organs and stuff that they use. I thought it sounded really authentic. It was a bit of a throwback to a lot of kind of prog sounds from the 70s and 80s. So a lot to like. A couple of things that wasn't for me. I felt maybe could have been better, but generally it got better with each listen that I had to the album. What we thinking scores? What's your rating for this one?
It's a 3.5. I think they have set the groundwork now. They've put in solid foundations and they've got me in, and I'm curious to see where they go. Very much like yourself, I think they clearly have other registers they can switch into. I'd like to see them try that more. And we'll see where it goes. Debut, they're going to go out, they're going to tour, they're going to come back, they're going to do something else. And that's, I think the proof will be in the pudding then when they come back and start doing a second album. I think you'll find that they'll have a good indication live what works, what is maybe a bit too repetitive, and how to stretch things out. So as a debut goes, more than a solid start. So 3.5.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think this definitely grew on me more the more I went back to it. I think there was at least maybe 4 of the 7 tracks that kind of left me with something to think about after the album was finished. I just think there's maybe just a little bit of consistency lacking from it, but I think, as you said, they've got the tools, so a bit of time, a bit of experience. I think they'll come back even stronger on the next one. So yeah, I'd agree. 3.5 seems fair for this one. Okay, so that is the new album from HamaSaari. It drops on the 3rd of March. It's called Ineffable. I put some links below to the band, the pre-order, all that sort of stuff, so you can check it out. Let us know what you think. Have a little listen to the singles and stick some comments in below. Happy to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. That is the review. Thank you for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.